I think we are going to officially open this informal get-together and really appreciate like 100 people. We had 90 chairs, so we have clearly about 100 people here, which is wonderful too. As a celebration of Alfred Strickholm's life and the people that were biologically related to him, we are all emotionally and psychically related to him, but there's Lee Strickholm, of course, you all know her, and they were married 69 years. Wow. And there's me, I'm the oldest son, and then Peter is in a facility in Terre Haute and is getting wonderful care there. And then Julie, his daughter, where's Julie? She's over there. And then we've got David over there, that's Dad's son-in-law, they're married. And then I'm married to Tony, so she's the daughter-in-law. And then we've got a couple of nieces from New York, New Jersey, and Vermont. Where do you live? New Hampshire, okay. That's right, her parents lived in Vermont. That was George, his younger brother, Al's younger brother. And then we've also got grand and great-grandchildren. We've got Megan, where's Megan? Megan and Isaac. And then we got two of the great-grandkids over there. So we got a wonderful biological spawn here, but we've also got such a wonderful group of people who know and loved Al, and he loved all of you too. So the way this is going to go is that we have a karaoke machine, but you only have to sing if you want to. So we're going to, Bill Breeden is here, and he is a minister of the Unitarian Church, Unitarian Universalist Church, and he will just want to say a few words and lead a prayer maybe at the end of the service. And Lee, my mom, will want to talk at the end. She's got a wonderful poem about that she wants to read. And so I'm going to talk about Dad's life up until he came to Bloomington. And then we have two mics, and so Tony is going to just allow anybody who wants to tell a story about Al and your experience with him, and she'll have a roving mic, and we can all talk, and it will all be captured on camera, so. And it is going to go on the internet, so. I think, isn't that right? Yeah, that's right, on YouTube, so you could all be celebrities really soon. I'm going to call Bill. You want to come on up and say a few words? Yeah, I'm sorry, Bill, yeah, I'm sorry. You and him look alike. So you were looking over my head. That's right.
Well, I'll offer a prayer later. Why don't I just do a prayer now? Would that be all right to start this? Can everybody hear me? I can hear me really well. It's good to be here as a friend of Al Strickholm, an amazing man that I'll share some words about later. But it's good to see you all again. Many of you have seen in the last few months as I've come to church and see you there occasionally. And I'm honored to be here today. So let us have a prayer for this service. Eternal Spirit of life, we send a voice in four directions, and to earth and sky, and to all that is sacred in these loving hearts gathered here, and to the spirit of Al Strickholm, wherever, whatever, whenever he is in our hearts today, and we send that voice in honor of him as well. Help us to be loving to one another. Help us to learn that forgiveness is really not nearly as difficult as it is said to be. And help us to walk sacredly upon this earth and care for this earth as our mother, and care for the issues of justice, as did Al. in 4 directions, to earth and sky. And in the name of all that is sacred in these gathered hearts, we do so send a voice. Blessed be.
Okay. I need these. And we sat around last night, my mom and my sister Julie and I and Tony, and we, this is called Back of the Envelope, literally. We sketched out what we wanted to say about his life. And so I thought I'd start at the beginning with a little bit about his parents. They both came from Estonia, and many of you know that, some of you know that. Let's see. His mom, they immigrated to Canada, and they crossed Canada in a covered wagon. And I don't know, you all seen the wagon train and all that, and everybody gets there in like a couple of weeks. That's not how it worked back then. They would go like 300 miles and run out of money and food, and then they would stop and work for a couple months. And they would get more money, and they'd go another couple hundred miles. So it would take like a year or two to get across the country, not 3 months. That's really how it happened. And then once they got there, the Spanish flu came through, and the husband died, and the boys died, and was left with the mom and a couple of her daughters to survive on a farm up in Alberta. So, I mean, that's the kind of strength that we've all come from with our ancestors. And so, but she didn't like the farming world, so by the time she was a young gal, she went to New York. That's one way to cure yourself of the cold winters and wild of Alberta. You go to the biggest city in the world, you go to New York. But the good thing is that then my dad's father, he joined the Merchant Marines in Estonia, Russia, in order to not get drafted into the army, and traveled the world. But when he got off in New York and went to the Estonian hut or social center like this, he met who became his wife, my grandma, and so he jumped ship, didn't show up, and never became a citizen. So that's how things worked back then. So that's the background of my dad and his parents. And then my dad was born right at the start of the Great Depression. And I just wanted to say a few words about that. Well, one of the things that happened in the Depression was that employers would hire people for a couple of weeks. His father was a machinist, so he would go work with machinery, build things, and then at 2 weeks, the employer wouldn't pay anybody, just lay him off. So that's how the employers kind of treated people. So they would be in positions where my dad would come home from school and they had been evicted from their apartment, and their furniture was out in the sidewalk. And they would take turns staying awake at night to make sure nobody stole their furniture in the middle of the sidewalk, and other family members slept, and they would go to grade school and high school the next day. I mean, that's the kind of world that our ancestors survived and lived through, so we could, be here today. And so anyway, his dad became a communist, so you can see why. And so then Al became a socialist, so it's kind of communist light, I guess. But one of the things that would happen is that they were in the Bronx, and his mom would give him 5 cents to take the subway either to or from the Central Library, which was like 8 or 10 miles away. So he would take the subway there, but then he would read and study and walk 10 miles back home. And that's what he did back then. But he and his brother Harry had a little scam to make some money. And you remember those kind of wood cigar boxes that had the flip lid? Okay. So they would take the cigar box, flip the lid open, and bet other boys that they couldn't roll a marble up through the lid and into the box. Because what would happen is when they roll a marble, it would jump because it would hit that little lip and it would never go in the box. So that was our little scam for making money, a nickel at a time. in the Depression. That was him and his older brother Harry, who is Sally's father, who is also passed away a couple of years ago. Dad was went to Brooklyn Tech High School, and he was very interested in astronomy. He learned how to build telescopes, and he was the weather forecaster for the high school. He would get on the intercom and give the weather forecast for the day. All right, so he joined the Army before he was 18. The war was ending, and he knew that the GI Bill was going to be available, and there was no way he was going to go to college without financial support. But so he joined the Army, and because of the GI Bill, he was a very smart guy, as you know, and basically they sent him to college. So he spent time going to college on the GI Bill, and then when he got out, he went to the University of Michigan, where he was in an engineering fraternity, and he got a degree in physics and engineering. So from there, so you know how it is wherever you go to college and get your bachelor's degree, that's the football team that you are forever, loyal to. So when I believe when my mom was in labor with me, he was so excited about the Michigan football game that was on at the same time. Is that right, Mom? Yeah. So he went to the University of Minnesota and University of Chicago, but he never got excited about their football teams. So, and I know there's a football game right now with IU, right? So when he was in graduate school at University of Minnesota, some really cool things happened. One is, of course, he met my mom, Lee, at a dance, and they got very interested in each other and then got married the day before Thanksgiving, I think, and it snowed, right? So they couldn't actually get to their honeymoon location because everything was snowed in. That's kind of partly the story of his life, because that tent out there, Dad and I would go on backpacking trips, and the last trip we went on, we got snowed in 10 miles out in the Sierras from Tuolumne Meadows. So we spent like 48 hours in that tent. So getting snowed in, part of his legacy. So he had Mom, and he had me, and then 4 years later he had my brother Peter. And one of the things that Al did that was really unique in the world is that he invented the patch clamp in graduate school, which has been used for, then a group of scientists got together and won the Nobel Prize with the patch clamp. And what the patch clamp does, it allows you to understand the flow of ions and the flow of different chemicals across the membrane of the cell, the nerve cell, so you can really look at how the sodium pump works in the electrophysiology. And that's really what he was. He was a brilliant electrophysiologist and helped a group of scientists, because what he invented, he didn't have enough money, to win the Nobel Prize. You got to have 10 people in your in your group, and have all your undergraduates do or your graduate students do all the work, right? He didn't really have that because he was still a graduate student. So anyway, they won the Nobel Prize, but he helped them do that. So anyway, interesting story. After 6 or 7 years in graduate school, he thought he was getting ready to get his PhD, but his advisor, or his faculty member, was really kind of using the graduate students there to do a lot of his research for him, and he didn't want my dad to leave. So one of his fellow graduate students was talking to his advisor. So isn't Alfred ready to get his doctorate now? And he said, no, it's still gonna be a couple of years before he's ready to do that. So when my dad heard that, he was like, I'm out of here. And he got accepted to the University of Chicago, and that changed his life, because he met an advisor called Tobias, and he got trained in biophysics, not just physics, but the biology of the human body and the physics that makes the human body run. And that changed his life. And while we were in Chicago, one little story, but we lived in Hyde Park, and back then it was a pretty nasty neighborhood, and one day my bike got stolen, and he ran after the kid that stole it and got it back for me. So there was Alfred running down, and it was that was a cool thing. So we then moved to Sweden. He went there for a postdoc to the University of Uppsala, and that's where we all learned to ski. Because for me, going to second grade, there was no English schools. I had to learn Swedish because nobody else spoke English really. But I would ski to school, cross-country ski to school in the winter, and bicycle to school in the summer. They had bike racks and ski racks in school. There weren't any buses. You want to go to school, you get there. You figure it out. So that was really cool because and Al and I, and sometimes Mom, we would go out cross-country skiing in the evenings and the weekends in the farmers' fields. So, and he also made a sled for Peter, and would pull Peter along with us. So then we went to San Francisco, where we were for 5 years, and that's where Julie came into our life. There's my lovely sister Julie. And interesting story. Okay, you all know, okay, I think you're all the age, you know who the Jefferson airplane is, right? Okay, raise your hands if you know who the Jefferson airplane is. Oh, okay. Okay, how many people here know what a strobe light is? Okay. Do you know how the strobe light came into rock? My dad had a strobe light in his lab, and the wife of the guitarist for the Jefferson airplane was his secretary. He said, "This is the coolest thing in the world. Can I borrow your strobe light and take it to the concert at the Avalon Ballroom tonight?" Thus, the strobe light, Dad's strobe light, started the strobe light revolution in the rock for rock concerts. So may he be known for the patch clamp and the strobe light. Those are his two main contributions to culture. Okay, so we did a lot of, that's where we did a lot of camping, and we actually did a many backpacking trips. But we climbed Mount Whitney, my dad and I and Peter. Peter was like, I don't know, 9 or something. Put a backpack on him. We went up to 14,500 feet. Over a couple days. And we also went to Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, which is on Cape Cod, 2 summers, and up to the Puget Sound. There's a marine biological station on San Juan Island. And so we would drive across the United States and camp the whole way, back and forth, and visiting Sally and her dad and Phyllis's dad and parents. And so we did a whole lot of camping, and when you came in, his camping gear is outside, and that's the tent that he would use, and that's the sleeping bag he'd use for many years, and his hiking poles, and pictures of his last trip when he and I camped out and took a backpacking trip out of Tuolumne Meadows for a week. And that was when he was 85 years old. So, oh, and we had a microbus. Everybody know what a microbus is? Yeah. So they would go like, going uphill, we'd maybe get to 45 miles an hour, Then we get over the hill, we'd really try to get the speed up, to 65, because the next hill we know we're going to gradually lose speed, because they were air cooled and they had like no power, right? Oh, and they were always breaking down. But it was a lot of fun, and Mom had she had the whole ice chest and the food chest that Dad had made. And he was an amazing woodworker. I think some of you know this. And he made a lot of the furniture in our house. And he worked in teak and cherry wood and had a woodworking shop for many years in our home. So, let's see. Okay, so then we moved to Bloomington. And he came here to help start the Medical Sciences Division of the Physiology Department. And I know that you came here in 75, is that right? And joined Dad? Yeah? I came in 77, okay. So we came here in 67, Mom, or 66? What? 66, okay. And he really helped a lot of people, and he really did a lot of very creative things here. And I know that we've got some people that want to speak about that as well. And so he trained a lot of nurses and a lot of doctors, and as you know, he was very passionate about alternative medicine, and one of his research areas was nutraceuticals, which are natural plant substances, and combining them as a way to treat cancer. And he and I actually had a company called Indiana Labs, and he had a NIH grant, and they were studying using different combinations of curcumin and alpha-lipoic acid and things like that to cure aggressive breast cancer. And that's what he was working on when he started to, well, he started having dementia about 4 years before he passed away. And so that kind of curtailed that. But I know that Mary Mahern and other people want to speak, and I just want to end up by saying that we all got a copy of the spiritual journey from his last 2 weeks of his life, and I just wanted to mention a few things about that. One is that 40 years ago, he started learning meditation at a Buddhist monastery when he was on sabbatical in Eugene, Oregon, and he continued that along with other forms of meditation. And so when he was in hospice, and he was in hospice for 10 days, but without food and water, by the way, people can really live a week or two when they need to, as they're getting ready to transition or leave. And so I contacted the Buddhist monastery here, and 2 of the monks came out twice, and they chanted with him, or to him. And he came actually out the last day or 2 out of his coma, and he reached up and he thanked them, which was a beautiful thing. And that story in the booklet. He believes he is part of the energy of the universe. And one of the things that happened 2 days before he passed away was a deer came out of the forest and came right up to the window and looked at him. And I asked the hospice nurses about this, and they said, that happens a lot here. 48 hours before somebody passes away, the deer come out of the forest and they look at that person. They feel that person's spiritual body getting ready to leave their physical body. They see that and they sense that, and they come out and they look at that. And then the last thing I want to say is that Bill, story about, hello, there's a story about Bill Breeden and the fish. So as Dad was in his last few hours, and Bill was fishing, he caught, I think, one of the biggest fishes of his life. And for a reason unknown to him, he named it Alfred, Strickholm, and he threw it back in the lake. And literally, his wife said, seconds later, I called Bill and said, Bill, come on over. Dad's leaving and he wants you to say goodbye. So there's a fish out there named Alfred Strickholm. And it's the biggest fish in the lake, and he sees it on a regular basis. Okay, so that brings us up to the sharing time. And Tony, you want to come up here so I can give you the other mic? Oh, Julie, did you want to say something? And then my mom will want to say something near the end and read a poem about Dad and being part of the energy of the universe, which is what he truly believed in. Okay. You want to come here? All right, here you go.
So as everybody knows, I am the crier of the family. I am my dad's heart. I have a picture holding my dad's hand. It's the last time he reached out to me. I told him that I have him, that I'll take care, and I'll take care of my mom. Last night, I got a text from one of my friends. And when I was in high school, my parents told me I wasn't allowed to go to Indiana University. I had to go at least 5,000 miles away because I didn't get to travel to Sweden, California, or any place else that my brothers had gone. And so I didn't know how it was, and I just loved IU. And I didn't like any other college. So Dad decided my senior year he would take me. I could choose one friend. That friend last night texted me and told me she appreciated him. And he changed her world. My dad did that for a lot of people, and he loved my kids, and he absolutely loved my stepkids, or my grandchildren also. He idolized Abby, who when she was a very baby, would play the piano, and would be told that she needed to spend time with Peter to learn how to be a good pianist. Unfortunately, Peter is not in the state to do that now, but hopefully Abby will pick that back up and find her love for music again. So now I've got myself together. I hope that you all tribute my father. He was a loving man. He always wanted to save everybody. He did great time trying to cure diabetes, which is what I have. He tried to help Peter with his issues and things that were going on with his life. And he helped my uncle, Harry, with his issues. Even though it's not normal medicine that you would think, but I truly believe that he was a miracle worker. Thank you all for being here.
Okay, so yeah, just one more quick story about my dad, because we were talking about it out there. So he was a physiologist, right, and a biophysicist. So when I was at University High School, anybody remember that? I was like the last graduating class, and they didn't want the women to wear pants because they said it would interfere with their menstrual cycle. Okay. So he went in and educated the administrators that that was not true. And that was the third thing he did, is he made it so that high school girls could wear pants in Bloomington, Indiana in high school. All right, who do we got? Who wants to talk first? There we go.
Is this close enough? Yeah. So I'm Dr. Mary Maher. I'm just about to abandon the mask. When this pandemic started, I said mask-free in 23. Got a few more months of the mask before we could be mask-free in 23. So I am so honored to have the opportunity to speak about Dr. Al Strickholm.
Can you hear her?
Oh, okay. Real close? Okay, maybe I can talk louder? Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to talk about how important Dr. Al Strickholm was to me as a mentor. I met him when I signed up for his summer physiology class in 1981. I was taking the class as a prerequisite for nursing school, and it was towards the end of a very intense 8-week summer class that he stopped me and 2 other women on the stairs outside the lecture hall in the lecture room in Myers Hall on Indiana University campus here in Bloomington. He told us we were all doing well in the class, and he encouraged us to consider to go to medical school. He had been teaching medical students for years by that time, and he said he thought any of us could do the work. I remember him saying, "I think many women dismiss the consideration of going to medical school out of hand." At the time, women in medicine was a significant minority, and I personally had never known or been treated by a woman physician. Now, Al's mother had recently passed that summer, and I always felt that it was somehow a tribute to her that he spoke to us 3 women. It was one of those, I don't know who needs to hear this, but it was that kind of a moment, and I was the one who needed to hear it. So I changed from nursing to pre-med in a matter of a couple of weeks, And without Al's vote of confidence, I really don't think I would have gone to medical school. Many times I reminded myself during medical school that Al had said there was nothing so difficult about medical school that I couldn't handle. I've always held Al in high regard. I joined the UU Church in part because I knew he was a member. I attempted to start a meditation practice because he was such an ardent meditator and he shared his knowledge and his experiences with members of the UU Church. I try to keep my Sierra Club membership up to date in his honor. Maybe I'll take over selling the calendars at the bazaar. And I've studied alternative medicine practice in part because of Al was so enthusiastic about the anti-aging effects of lifestyle medicine and the use of nutraceuticals. Al had a very curious mind and a very open heart. He relayed how proud he was of me over the years when I would see him on Sundays at church. The biggest lesson I learned from Al is to be generous in encouraging others. In fact, I believe the very best tribute to Al we can give is to take the time to encourage others. We may never know what a few words of confidence can do for another person. Thank you.
Okay, so Tony has the roving mic. And by the way, I remember my dad said, I talked to a couple of these women, they are smarter than the men in the class, and they should, God damn it, better become doctors. That's what he said. He said, you guys were smarter, and you should become doctors.
Thank you, Tony. My name's Tony. My name's Tony Neff, and I'm from the Medical Sciences program. I taught anatomy. And I came here in 1977, and when I came for an interview, all I knew about Bloomington was they had some coach that did something, and they had a problem with PCB. And when I first came here for the interview, one of the people I met with was Al, and one of the first things I asked him, I says, Al, what is Bloomington like? And Al looks at me and he says, Bloomington is the Berkeley of Indiana. If it's not happening in Bloomington, it isn't happening anywhere in Indiana. And from then on, he was fantastic because you could talk about any topic. My topics were totally different than his, but we would discuss them. And I would discuss patch clamps. He was very versatile in all subjects, including meditation. In fact, one time I went up to his lab and he was meditating in his office. And so I really appreciate the input that Al has had on my career and my life. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Margie. I didn't know Al until after he had dementia, so I didn't know his mind. Oh, I didn't know Al until 4 years ago, so his mind was already quieting, but I knew his heart, and I'm here because I loved that heart, and I love that man. And I want to honor that he was love. He embodied love.
Barbara Randall. My husband and I came to Bloomington about 2 years after the Strickholms, and he came to join the physiology department. I snuck in the back door when somebody retired and they needed somebody to teach the introductory course. So we were both in the department, and I'm probably the last one left who was teaching during that 20 to 30 years in that department. But it was a delightful experience. It was a great department, and Al was a big part of it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Over there.
Okay, well, while I'm walking, I just want to say that as Al's daughter-in-law, I felt very blessed. He was a very loving man. He loved his family, and that was really apparent. And I will always remember his smile and the twinkle in his eye. So if some of you have humorous stories to tell about him, I want to hear it.
We're not leaving without a couple of humorous stories, okay?
Well, before we get to the humorous stories, we do have some appreciation from my Aunt Jean, Sally's mom. So we're jointly going to share what Jean wrote. So this is from Jean Strickholm, Uncle Harry's wife. She says, "I will always remember Al with affection and admiration. He was a loving brother to Harry, father to Steve, Peter and Julie, and husband to Lee. He was devoted to his scientific studies and shared what he learned with his family and others to promote their health." And before I pass this on to Sally, I'll just add on my own behalf, he also shared his knowledge with my mother to help with her health, and made her last years more comfortable, and is very much appreciated. But also as a mentor, as everyone else has said, during the difficult times in my life, Uncle Al was there to be a great shoulder to lean on, a very understanding and caring man who made you feel filled with love, not just his love for you, but just love internally. So I was very blessed to have him as an uncle and a friend.
Hi, so I'm Sally, and I do have a voice problem, so I hope you can hear. Is that better? Okay. I'm Sally. I do have a voice problem, so I hope you can hear. My mom spent a good 2 weeks thinking about what to say, so I'm going to continue reading. Al rescued Harry, my dad, from prostate cancer by urging Harry to take nutraceuticals, which brought Harry's PSA levels back to normal. I can attest, I have all the charts, every test that he did, he gave them to me. Al has helped me to stay healthy, meaning my mom, by recommending nutraceuticals for me. And Al continues to bless those who he has left behind and will always be remembered with love. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Who's got a humorous story about Alfred?
Well, Steve, I don't know how.
Here we go. All right. If may I tell the story about a little bit about Hulda? That's your mom. Yeah. Hulda was very, very much into alternative medicine, and Dad took her under his wing and gave her a research assistantship job at his office. And I think, didn't Hulda go to jail? I think she did for some of some of the people in the traditional hierarchy got upset with her, and Dad helped her with that as well. But Hulda has a very thick book of nutraceutical and alternative medicine treatments, and I'll let you take it from there.
Well, I was going to talk about the prequel, which is in the mid-1960s. My mother was newly divorced and 3 children under 7, and a PhD, which for a woman in the 60s wasn't as marketable as it may be now. And so she reached out to Al, who was currently doing research here at Indiana University. And as Steve just mentioned, Al agreed to have her come and work in his lab. And she did that for probably about 10 years. but after lining that up, we piled into an old vehicle with a U-Haul trailer on the back, and we showed up at Al and Lee's door, and Al and Lee took us in for what seemed like a couple years, since I was about 7, but I'll have to check with Lee, but it was probably closer to a month or 2. Having had a home and 3 children of my own, I've gained a new appreciation for the sacrifices that Al and Lee made towards our family, and probably also Steve and Peter and Julie having to share their home with some strangers. Although I have to say, I made one of the best friends of my life during that period, Peter. I wish he was here. But I'm honored to be here and say thank you. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Al and Lee saved our family.
Yeah, I got it. So I'm Julie's daughter. Al was my grandpa. He really loved fruit trees and being out in the wilderness. So my family has decided to try and do an orchard for him in his memory. So there is over on this table by the door, where there's pictures of us planting trees for him. And if you would like to donate, we have a donation over there for that cause. Thank you.
Who else would like to tell a story about Al?
Well, I first met Al at the Unitarian Church, as many of us did probably, and later as a member of the Humanist group and the Free Thinkers. With the Humanist group and the Free Thinkers, he was a very active member for many years in that group. He was very serious about his science, about his patch clamps, which we heard many times. And he was very serious about Buddhism and meditating. And we had many interesting discussions about that. But he was also a very humorous person, believe it or not. I remember the memorial service for Elizabeth Lyon. And Al told a number of great jokes. And the best one was the one that ended with an old lady going into a drugstore and ordering condoms. And she was asked what size, and she said, well, big enough for a camel. You have to hear the whole joke to appreciate it. Thank you.
So now we're getting warmed up. All right. All right, who else has a wonderful story? I know they're out there.
I just wish I'd known him better. I met him through the Unitarian Universalist Church, and I think it was Rob Hongen and I were part of a adult religious education committee, and Al had a course called Live to 100, and then he changed it to Run to 100. And then he changed it to Run to 100. Why not? And I took the course, and there are probably people in here who took it too. And he gave us work, pages and pages. I mean, I was not a science student, you know, my field was very different from his, but he said, start with the molecules. Start on the molecular level. And I loved his Bronx accent because I grew up partly in New York too.
I'll second that on the Live to 100. I was part of that group, and it was a group of probably about 40 people. And he just offered it. It wasn't part of any particular class. He just decided that he wanted to share it. And I think that was the best thing of all.
I'm in the medical sciences program, and Al taught a course to middle school kids in the College of Gifted and Talented. It's called Space Biology. And he would teach physiology and high energy and gravitational forces and all that to middle school kids. And then when he decided to go into something more serious, I took that over. And that shows you the depth of his knowledge and what he could talk about. There's also a little secret. I spent 3 years in the U.S. Army, and he was in the service. And he said there was a time in the service when he was a drill sergeant. Can you imagine him being a drill sergeant?
Well, he was a pacifist, so that must have been an interesting grill. Take your guns, put them on the ground, put your hands in prayer, sit and meditate for world peace. Some people have also talked about the live to 100. And as I was saying to my mom, he died at 93, and I said, well, if you get a 93 on a test, that's an A, right? Yeah. But just a little to show you how profound his thinking was. The way he got into the nutraceuticals was that he said, look, you've got plants, and they're radiated by sun 365 days of the year, and they never die of cancer. Has that ever occurred to anybody here? He said, why is that? Well, it's because they have a cocktail of nutraceuticals that because they're constantly getting cancer from sun radiation. If you lived outside, staked outside, with no clothes on for a year, you would die of skin cancer, right? They don't die of cancer. Why is that? Because they're constantly using this mixture of nutraceuticals to do what's called apoptosis. The way that cells get cancer is they start to mutate, but they also have to turn off the self-destruct mechanism. Two things have to happen. What happens in his research was that nutraceuticals go in and they heal the cell. Chemotherapy destroys cells. Nutraceutical heals the cells and turns back on the self-destruct mechanism. And now the cancer cell goes, oh, I'm a mutating cell and I need to kill myself. All cells are programmed to self-destruct if they mutate. The only way a cell becomes cancerous is if it also turns off that mechanism. His research was, let's turn back on that mechanism through natural processes that all plants have developed over the last 100 million years and applied to the human body. And that was the miracle of the work that he started, and that I really hope that people are continuing on in the world. So that is the secret and how he was thinking very deeply about how to take the wisdom of nature and apply it to natural healing in the human body. Okay. Who else would like to share a story? Okay. Oh, here we go.
I was on the worship committee for, well, I'll stay over here.
You don't get too close to that.
This way. I'll go this way.
Come on. All right.
I'm Glenda. I was on the worship committee for a while at the UU Church, and we asked Al to speak for us a couple of times. He was always good. He was fun. And several of you have said things about how much he loved. And you feel the love that's coming out of so many of the stories. So I think it would be good to sing a song about love. It's very easy to sing, and everybody can sing it. So even if you haven't said anything about Al yet, well, this will be saying how much you love Al and how much You know, somebody talked about Al's sparkling eyes. I think, wow, you know, yes, every time I saw Al, it was like just twinkles in his eyes. So, Bill, come up here and help me. And we're going to sing Who Will Draw a Ring Around the Moon, Who Will Draw a Line from Star to Star, Who Will Sing a Penny's Worth of song to say how much in love we are. And then we'll sing it, I will draw a line, and then we will sing it, we will, okay? And it's all about love, okay? Who will draw a ring around the moon? Who will draw a line from star to star? Who will sing a penny's worth of song to say how much in love we are? I will draw a ring around the moon. I will draw a line from star to star. I will sing a penny's worth of song to say how much in love we are. We will draw a ring around the moon. We will draw a line from star to star. We will sing a penny's worth of song to say how much in love we are.
That was beautiful, thank you. Okay, who else? What other stories are out there? Mom, I know that you want to read a poem. Yeah. You want to come up here or you want to read where you are?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hold it right up to your mouth. Yeah.
Okay. You are a bit of stardust, endowed with dreams. The world, it seems, clamors for reality, draining your vitality to live the dream. Recall, we are such stuff as dreams are made on. Come, walk with eyes fixed on the heavens, whence you came, not progeny of Mars, but offspring of the stars.
So we have wonderful refreshments. Dad's favorite, well, he loved food. I remember taking him to an ice cream store and as we came back from the camping trip, and I said, so I'm buying, and he said, okay, I'll have 3 scoops of ice cream. Like, I'm only having 2. And he was diabetic at that point too. He didn't care. It's like, okay, he just like, ice cream was his like kryptonite, but he loves food, and so we are serving food in his honor. And Julie has brought 300 scones, I think? I don't know. You all have to eat 3 of them, okay? That was one of his favorites food, and we have cranberry and raspberry and chocolate and all these wonderful flavors, and coffee and lemonade, and we want you to come up after Bill speaks and enjoy, have a scone in Alfred's honor, and feel free to look at the photos if you haven't already, read the booklet about the last 2 weeks of his life if you haven't already, and Bill, come on up and say a few more words.
One last thing. Al did start that wonderful orchard on Julie's property, and just a reminder that if you'd like to donate to more trees, there's a way to do that over there on the table.
Well, I'd like to share a poem which comes from the. Can you hear me well? I'll share a poem that comes from the poet laureate of Unitarian Universalism, Mary Oliver. When death comes, like a hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snap the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through that door full of curiosity, wondering what's it going to be like, this cottage of darkness. And therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as field daisies, and as singular, and each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does towards silence. And each body a lion of courage, something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was a bridegroom taking the world into his arms, into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I've made something of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. Well, we can certainly say that Al did far more than just visit this world. And his eyes have been mentioned before, and his amazing eyes. I mean, if you really don't know what a twinkle in an eye is, you did when you saw Al Strickholm. I mean, it was a real twinkle, always there. And he tried to get me in his Live to Be 100 class, actually, several times, and I'm glad that so many people enjoyed it. He asked me why. I said, you know, I've really never been interested in living to be 100, and that just shocked him. You know, I feel like I've already passed the biblical time of 70 years, so everything's just an add-on. But I was always talking about that. He was always had the greatest curiosity of any person I've met, I think. He was just a curious man. And the curiosity came through in his eyes when you talk with him. And I have to say about his meditation practice. If meditation isn't loving, what else is it? And how Al was a loving person. In the last few weeks of his life, when I visit him, and even when he was not responsive, I could place my hand on his forehead and talk to him. I always felt that he was listening. He listened to you when you spoke. He heard you not only with his ears, but his eyes and his mind. And I was honored to know him, and as I'm sure all of you were honored to know him. And let's celebrate his life, which continues. And about the fish, I literally had caught a huge catfish that morning, and I decided to release it. And I bent over and was letting the fish go when my phone went off.
That was me.
That was him saying, Al is passing now. And so I named it Al, and I see it I feed the catfish every morning in the bluegill, and it comes out all the time. It's got a white spot on its head. If you come out sometime, you can probably see it. It gives me a sense that who knows where Al is now. I suspect he will be in our hearts forever. Blessed be.
So Julie is his biggest catch. I just want to say in closing that Al, Dad, believed that there was energy in the universe, and he believed that he was going to join that energy. And I know that he loved you, and I believe that he loves you now as well. And we love you, and you all love each other. And please, spend time with each other, have some of Dad's favorite scones, and enjoy our time together. And if you don't have a booklet, we got plenty more. And this is a very appropriate place for Dad, celebration of life, because it's a civilian conservation corps. And this was built during the Depression when he really became the man he was and is today. So we love you, and thank you so much for joining and celebrating Dad's life.